My name is Maya Thompson. I was 16 when my mom threw me out with nothing but a trash bag and a belly full of fear. The door slammed behind me with a sound I can still hear, sharp, final like a gunshot. I flinched, my fingers curled tighter around the plastic bag handles, cutting into my palms. The porch light blinked off a second later, leaving me in the dark like I'd never existed. "You've ruined this family," my mother hissed, just before she disappeared behind the door. Her voice was ice, not anger, something colder. Disgust, like I'd become something filthy, something she needed to scrub out of her perfect life. I stood there frozen just for a second, waiting for the knob to turn, for her face to reappear, softer this time, maybe with tears. I was still her daughter. She had to come back, but she didn't. No one did. Not even my father, David, who stood in the hallway, arms crossed over his chest like a judge delivering a sentence. He didn't say a word. He didn't even meet my eyes. And somehow, that silence cut deeper than anything my mom, Carol, could have screamed. I looked down at the trash bag, my clothes stuffed in with no care, like I was already halfway to the dumpster, and then I looked down at my belly, still barely rounded but already the center of my universe. "Okay," I whispered, brushing a tear from my lip. "It's just us now." I stepped off the porch and into the night. The air smelled like damp grass and old pavement. Somewhere in the distance, a lawn sprinkler kicked on. I walked past houses with glowing windows and warm kitchens, families eating dinner or watching TV together. Their laughter drifted through the air like it belonged in a different world, a world I'd just been shoved out of. Every step felt heavier than the last. My legs ached. My chest felt like it was collapsing inward. I had no phone, no money, no plan. The father of my baby, Tyler, hadn't answered a single message in weeks. And my so-called best friend, Jess, stopped talking to me the day rumors hit the school. It was just me, and the little heartbeat growing inside me. I ended up on a bench near the bus stop 3 blocks away. My thighs were trembling. My hands were numb. I sank down, letting the trash bag rest beside me. My breath fogged up in the cold air. My arms wrapped around my belly. I closed my eyes. "I don't know what I'm doing," I whispered, "but I swear I'll never make you feel like this. I'll never make you feel like garbage." And that was it. That was the moment something hardened in me, a quiet, aching fire. I didn't know how I'd survive. I didn't know where I'd sleep that night. But I did know one thing. They might have thrown me out, but they hadn't broken me. And 20 years later, after everything, I stood at that same doorstep again. But this time, I was wearing a designer suit. I held the deed to the house in one hand, and when they opened the door, their faces went pale. Before the porch, before the trash bag, before the betrayal. I was just Maya Thompson. I was in 10th grade, living in a small town where everybody knew your name, your business, and how many minutes late you were to Sunday service. My family lived in a white colonial house with navy shutters, the kind people slow down to stare at in real estate listings. But inside, it was all control, pressure, and silence. My mom, Carol, ran our house like a museum, perfect and cold, not a pillow out of place, not a word wasted on feelings. Her love came in conditions like, "I'm proud of you, if you behave," or "You'll do well in life, as long as you don't embarrass us." My dad, David, was quieter, not cruel, just absent. A body in the room, but never really in it. If I got an A, he'd nod. If I cried, he'd leave. I think he thought staying out of it made him innocent. It didn't. At school, I kept my head down. I wasn't the popular girl, but I wasn't invisible either. I was just there. The kind of girl teachers liked, and classmates forgot about the second you walked past. And then there was Tyler. Tyler was everything I wasn't. Loud, charming, that kind of dangerous cute that made girls whisper in the hallways. When he smiled at me the first time in biology class, my heart practically forgot how to beat. I told myself it was harmless, just attention, just someone finally seeing me. But attention turned into tutoring sessions. Tutoring turned into late-night texts, and those turned into secrets. I didn't even realize how badly I wanted to be chosen until he chose me. We weren't careful. I know that now. But when you're 16 and desperate to feel loved, logic isn't your strong suit. It felt exciting, rebellious, like I had a secret the world couldn't take from me. Until the second pink line appeared on the pregnancy test. I still remember the feel of that plastic stick in my hand. My fingers were ice cold. My stomach flipped like I'd swallowed a tornado. I stared at it for what felt like an hour, the world going silent around me. I was pregnant. I thought Tyler would hold my hand and tell me we'd figure it out, but when I showed him the test, he didn't say anything, just stared at it. Then at me. His face went pale, and he laughed, like I was joking. Then his expression changed. He shook his head. "This isn't mine, Maya." Just like that. One sentence, and he backed away from me like I was a disease. His eyes darted around the parking lot like someone might see us talking. I remember whispering, "Tyler, it's yours." I haven't been with anyone else. But he was already gone. I never heard from him again. I spent the next week trying to breathe through the panic, hiding morning sickness, staring at myself in the mirror, wondering how I'd gotten so far from the girl who used to dream of college brochures and sketch in the margins of her notebook. And then came the night I told my parents. I wish I could say I was brave, but my hands were shaking and my voice cracked before I even got the words out. "Mom, I'm pregnant." Carol's fork froze halfway to her mouth. She didn't even look at me, just stared past me like I'd spoken in another language. And then she stood up, quietly, walked to the sink. David didn't say a word. The silence was louder than any yelling could have been. That was the beginning of the end. The last time I sat at that dinner table. The last time I was their daughter. The yelling didn't start right away. After I told them, after I said the words, "I'm pregnant," there was this awful choking silence that stretched across the dinner table like a storm cloud rolling in. My mom, Carol, didn't scream right away. She just stood at the sink, her back to me. Her fingers gripped the edge of the counter so hard I thought she might crack the granite. Her shoulders were stiff, unmoving, like she was frozen in place. The only sound in the room was the ticking of the wall clock and the hum of the fridge. David, my dad, stayed seated, didn't lift his eyes, just pushed his plate a few inches away like the food had suddenly turned his stomach. I could feel the panic rising in my chest, hot and wild. I wanted someone to say something, anything. I almost started laughing just to break the tension. But then Carol turned around. Her face wasn't twisted in rage like I expected. No, that would have made more sense. She looked disgusted, like she couldn't believe she'd let something like me into her home. "You've ruined this family," she whispered, her voice trembling, not with sadness but venom. "Do you know what people will say about us?" My throat tightened. "Mom, I didn't do this to you." Her hand flew through the air, not to hit me, but to silence me. Her palm stopped inches from my face. Her eyes were wild. "Don't. Speak." I flinched back. My knees felt weak. David stood now, but he didn't look at me. Not even once. "We warned you, Maya," he said, voice cold, distant. "We told you what would happen if you disrespected this house." "I'm your daughter," I said, my voice cracking. "I need help. Please, I don't have anyone else." Carol crossed her arms. "You made your choice. You want to play house with some dropout? Go live with him. Tyler's gone. He doesn't want anything to do with it." She scoffed. "Well, neither do we." I stood there, stunned, thinking they were just bluffing, that they'd cool off, that we'd cry and hug and figure it out together. Isn't that what parents are supposed to do? But instead, they packed a trash bag. I didn't even get to choose what went into it. A pair of jeans, some old t-shirts, a toothbrush, not even my jacket, no phone, no wallet, no goodbye. Just a cheap black trash bag shoved into my hands as Carol opened the front door. The porch light was already on. I could hear the cicadas buzzing in the trees. I could smell the faint smoke from someone's barbecue down the street. She didn't even look me in the eyes. "You need to leave," she said. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked, voice breaking. She didn't answer. She just slammed the door. That sound, it split something in me. I stood there on the porch, staring at the door, hoping, praying that my dad would open it again, that he'd whisper, "Come back in." She didn't mean it, but the light turned off, and no one came. I stood in the dark holding a trash bag, 6 weeks pregnant and completely alone. My legs finally moved, one shaky step after another, carrying me down the driveway. The gravel crunched under my sneakers. The world around me felt too quiet, too normal. Inside my chest, everything was breaking. I walked until the houses started to blur, my breath catching in short gasps. I didn't know where I was going. Just away. Anywhere but there. Eventually, I found a bench near the gas station on 3rd Street. I sat down, pulled my knees to my chest, and cried until the sun came up. That night, Maya Thompson, the good girl, the rule follower, the daughter, was gone. And in her place, a fighter was born. I didn't sleep much that first night. Every time I closed my eyes on that cold metal bench outside the gas station, I kept hearing the door slam again, over and over, like it was mocking me. My back ached. My legs were cramping. The cold crept into my hoodie and settled in my bones. I curled up tighter, holding my belly, whispering to the tiny life inside me like it could hear me. "I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm doing. But I swear to you, I'm not giving up." At sunrise, I walked. I didn't even know where I was going. My shoes were already starting to wear through, and my trash bag was ripping at the bottom, dragging on the sidewalk. I looked like a statistic, a teenage girl who screwed up, homeless, alone, forgettable, but I wasn't. I found a women's shelter on the east side after a kind, older woman at a bus stop pointed me there. St. Grace's Shelter for Women and Children? I still remember the chipped blue paint on the front steps and the sound of someone humming a gospel song inside. When the staff opened the door, I expected them to turn me away, but instead, a woman named Miss Carla looked at me. Really looked at me and said, "Come on in, baby. We'll find you a bed." That was the first time in days someone treated me like I mattered. The room was small, 2 bunk beds, a cracked window that let in too much noise from the street, but it was warm. There were blankets. I cried that night, not from fear, but relief. But comfort didn't last long. The real grind started the next day. At the shelter, you had to earn your stay. I cleaned floors, folded laundry, helped serve meals to women who were barely holding it together, just like me. I learned to live off dollar menus and food bank donations. I learned to hide my belly under loose sweaters. I learned that night shift wasn't just a job title. It was a lifestyle. I got a part-time job at a 24-hour diner, Evelyn's on Main, scrubbing dishes from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I walked there and back every night, through sketchy neighborhoods, heart-pounding every time a car slowed down near me. Some nights I didn't sleep at all. Some days I cried so hard in the bathroom stall that my chest felt like it would cave in. But I kept going. Because one night, after wiping down sticky counters and counting loose change just to afford a sandwich, I came back to the shelter and sat on the edge of my cot. My hands were raw. My feet were blistered. I could barely keep my eyes open, but I looked down at my belly and said it out loud this time. I swear to you, this life will be different. I don't care how long it takes. I'll work every shift, take every hit, climb every hill. You will never feel unwanted, not like I did. That was my vow, a promise made with empty pockets, but a full heart. That promise carried me through the worst days, when people talked behind my back, when I got rejected from jobs for being too young or too pregnant, when I got kicked out of a second shelter because they didn't allow newborns, when I gave birth alone, with no one to hold my hand but still whispered, "You're not alone." I named him Noah, because it means rest and comfort, and because the moment I held him, the world finally made a little more sense. I didn't know how I'd do it, but I knew I would, and 20 years later, I did. I hadn't seen the house in years. Not since the night I stood on that porch with a trash bag and a broken heart. I used to avoid that street altogether. Couldn't even look at the block on Google Maps without my stomach tightening. But 20 years changes a lot, and when I saw the listing, I knew. It was fate. I was scrolling through properties with my real estate agent, Mira, looking for investment flips. And there it was, 304 Linwood Lane. My childhood home, white colonial, navy shutters, the porch light still yellow, faded but familiar. My breath caught. I clicked the listing. 4 bedrooms, new roof, priced lower than I expected. "Want to tour it?" Mira asked, sipping her iced coffee. I stared at the screen for a long moment. My throat tightened. "No," I said. "Make an offer. Full cash. No contingencies. I want it fast." It closed in 11 days. The same day I signed the paperwork, I got a message on LinkedIn of all places. Carol Thompson. It felt like someone threw ice water on my chest. I hadn't heard from her or David since the night they kicked me out. No calls, no letters, not even a half-hearted Facebook birthday post. The message said, "We just sold the house. We're in town for a few days. Thought maybe we could reconnect over lunch." No apology, no acknowledgement of what they did, just convenience. For a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. But then I took a deep breath, stood up from my desk, and smoothed the lapels of my custom-tailored navy blue blazer. "Let's do lunch," I replied. 2 days later, I was standing at the front door of 304 Linwood, my Linwood, in 4-inch heels and a crisp white blouse, hair slicked back, makeup done, designer handbag in one hand, and the deed in the other. They pulled up in a rental. I saw them through the window. Carol still in pearls. David, grayer, slower, but still distant behind the eyes. They walked up the steps like nothing had ever happened, like they were coming home. I waited until they knocked. Then I opened the door. Their smiles froze. Carol's eyes scanned me, then the hallway behind me. "Oh, you're here." I let a pause stretch. "Yes, I live here now." She blinked. "You bought this house?" I held up the deed. "Number U sold this house. To me." Silence. David's mouth opened, then closed. His hands were shaking slightly. Carol's face drained of color. It was the first time I'd ever seen her speechless. I stepped aside, slow and calm. "Come in if you want. I kept the dining room the same. Thought you'd like the nostalgia they walked in, looking like ghosts in a memory. The hardwood floors creaked under their feet just like they used to. But now, the creaks answered to me." Carol stopped in the hallway, running her fingers along the wall. "I never thought," she murmured. I didn't let her finish. "I know," I said quietly. "You never thought I'd make it." She turned to me. "Maya, we didn't know what to do back then." I nodded slowly. "You didn't have to know. You just had to love me." Her mouth opened again, but I didn't need to hear it. I didn't need an apology, because the house was mine. My son, Noah, was in college. My business had 10 employees. My life was whole, with or without their acceptance. I looked around the room and smiled. Funny thing about throwing someone out, you never know what they'll grow into. They stood there, still pale, still stunned. And I felt tall. For the first time in my life, I felt like everything they tried to strip from me, worth, pride, strength, I had grown it all back, bigger, stronger. And I did it without them. After they left that day, the house felt quiet in a way that wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I stood in the foyer for a long time, alone again. Same spot where I once begged to stay. Same walls that heard my cries. But this time, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't waiting for the door to open or for someone to come back and say, "I'm sorry, we were wrong," because I didn't need it anymore. That was the thing I hadn't expected. Closure doesn't always come from someone else's words. Sometimes it comes from standing exactly where you once broke and realizing you're no longer broken. I didn't buy the house for revenge. I bought it because I could, because I'd earned it, because I'd worked for every damn brick and window and square inch, because I wanted to stand inside that space and prove to myself that my life didn't end on that porch 20 years ago. It started there. Every job, every night Noah fell asleep in my lap while I studied for online classes. Every time I stretched a $20 bill to cover gas, diapers, and dinner. Every birthday where it was just the two of us, laughing over dollar store balloons. Every moment I thought I couldn't keep going but did anyway. Built something, and I want to tell you something, especially if you're where I was. If you've been told you're not enough, if someone made you feel disposable, if the people who were supposed to protect you walked away when you needed them most, that is not the end of your story. I used to think being abandoned meant I wasn't worthy of love, but what I've learned is this. The people who leave you when you're most vulnerable don't define your worth. They just reveal their limits, and your strength, your future, your fire, that's yours. No one gets to take that away. Noah is 20 now. He's studying architecture. He says he wants to build homes for people who've lost theirs. I cried when he said that, not just because I'm proud, but because I know he came from nothing and turned it into purpose, just like I did. He doesn't know everything I went through yet. Not all the ugly details, but one day I'll tell him, and I'll say, "You saved me without even knowing it." I still see Carol and David sometimes. We don't talk much. I keep boundaries, for me and for Noah. They've aged. There's a softness in my father now, a kind of quiet regret he wears in the slowness of his voice. Carol pretends like she remembers things differently. It's easier for her, I think, to live in denial. And that's okay. They can carry their version. I'll carry the truth and the peace that comes with having survived it. Some people measure success by money or titles, but me, I measure it by how far I've come from that bench on 3rd Street, by the little boy who once clutched my finger in a hospital room and gave me a reason to fight, by the woman I've become, the one who shows up for herself, the one who knows her own worth, the one who walked through fire and came out holding the deed. So if you're watching this right now and your world feels like it's ending, I want you to remember something. You are not disposable. You are not ruined. You are becoming. And one day you'll open a door, look into the faces of those who left you behind, and realize you didn't need them to find your way home. If this story hit your heart, share it. Because someone out there is where I used to be. Cold, scared, and convinced they don't matter. They need this. And if you need more stories like this, stories of grit, growth, and rising from the ashes, hit subscribe. I'm not done telling them.